Now, may not be in the best interest right now because interest rates are quite high. But if interest rates would come down, you could get a debt consolidation loan. And what that does is it combines all your debt into one loan with one fixed payment, a fixed interest rate, and a fixed time period. Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Paycheck. I'm Paula Christine. So today we're going to talk about debt. Now, I think almost everybody has been in some sort of debt, throughout their lifetime. Some of it's good debt and some of it's bad debt. So a good debt would be like a mortgage or student loans because you're building an asset or it's improving your life. And bad debt would be car payments or credit cards. So car payments are a depreciating asset. And then your credit cards, of course, they always typically have higher interest rates. So whatever the circumstance that caused you to get into debt, it's okay. Nobody's here to judge you. Let's just figure out a plan to get you out of debt. Now, I do want to say if your debt is caused by bad spending habits, like you can't walk past a store without going in and buying something, or, you're using that Amazon deliveries coming to your house every day and you can't pay those bills off at the end of the month, then we've got a problem. And then you need to figure out why you have that problem. So check out our last two podcasts on money mindset and money personality and see if you can dig down deep and figure out why you are spending money. Now, I know personally I've gotten into debt before, and the reason that I got into debt was, one, I was a single parent and trying to raise two children. That sometimes is unavoidable, but I did end up getting a couple different jobs to help me make ends meet. So at one point I was working even 3 jobs. I did get myself out of debt. And then another time that I got into debt, because it was really about my self-worth. I just didn't feel worthy or lovable. And so I was buying things to make myself feel better. So through some therapy and some really living on a strict budget and tracking my expenses, I was able to pull myself out of that one. And I'm here to say today that I am debt-free, other than I will be taking on a mortgage shortly. So I did find that house. It's now an appraisal. So hopefully everything goes well and I will be picking up a mortgage. But that's okay. Mortgage is good debt because it's an asset that typically will appreciate and I will be building equity. So let's figure out how to get you out of debt. So there's a PDF you can go to my website, paulachristine.com, and download, and it's called Paying Off Debt, which is a step-by-step approach to tackling your debt. So I've got it in front of me, so it may look like I'm reading. Or first we're going to do, let's slow down a little bit. Okay. So we need to first list all of your debt. Now there is a worksheet that you can do. You can download or just grab a piece of paper and start listing all of your debt and categorize it, good debt or bad debt. So remember, good debt is assets that, typically are appreciating, like your mortgage. A student loan could be considered good debt because, it's furthering your education, which maybe will help you get a better job, but it is a debt that you all should think about getting paid off. And your bad debt would be, your car loan or your high interest rate credit cards. The first one of all those debts that we just discussed would be paying off those high interest credit cards. Now, hopefully you live on a budget, and if you don't, then go and download the budget tracker and start building yourself a budget, because you're really going to need to know how much money you can allocate towards paying off your debt. So list your debt, and if you don't have a budget, then now you're going to have to create a budget. So that sounds like a lot of steps to do this, but I'm telling you, if you just sit down, a couple hours one weekend and figure all this stuff out and get a control of where your money is going, you will feel so much better about yourself and your financial situation. So we list our debt, then we create the budget to make sure that we have the money to allocate towards that. Now, let's say that you created your budget and you don't really have any extra money. So where could you find extra money to pay that off? Well, you could maybe temporarily cut back on other expenses like your entertainment or dining out. Or one thing that I did and saved me, at least in my area, cable TV and internet is very expensive. My cable and TV internet bill was like $250 a month, which seems ridiculous. So now I stream, and my internet through Verizon is like $35. And I have Netflix, and then I got Hulu through my Verizon plan. So I took that bill down from $250 to $45, $50 a month. I mean, that's $200 that could be used towards your debt. Other things that you could do is maybe cancel subscriptions that you're not using, such as a gym membership. I know we all have that goal in the beginning of the year to, lose weight, get fit, and we join a gym, and then we stop after a month or two. So that would be another way that you could cut money. I know we just talked about streaming services, but they get into where they don't have new programming all the time. So maybe you have Netflix for 3 months, you watch everything you need to on there, then you maybe switch over to Stars or whatever it is. But, have one when you're done watching whatever you need to watch on there, cancel it and get another one. No reason to have 5 or 6 streaming services. You could use your tax refund, or you could maybe start a side hustle. There's a lot of opportunities out there that if you have knowledge in something, that you could start a course, or you could bake cookies. I know, or you know what? A lot of people are baking sourdough now and selling it. Maybe you're a party planner. I mean, there's all kinds of different side hustles that you could start, and maybe you don't have to do them forever. Maybe you just need to do it until you get out of debt. Now you're finding the extra money, and now you have to determine how or what method you're going to use to get yourself out of debt. So let's talk about those methods. There's 4. There's the snowball method, debt avalanche, and then there's debt consolidation, and then there's a debt management plan. So let's look at the snowball method first. So when you use the snowball method, you're focused on paying off the smallest debt first, while still making the minimum required payments to the other debts. So once the smallest debt is paid off, then you take the money that you were paying on that, and then you put that on the next debt. And then you keep doing that until all your debts are paid off. So let's look at that as an example. So let's say I had 3 credit cards. So I had one that had, $500 balance, one that had a $2,000 balance, and then the third had a $5,000 balance. So I would work on paying off that first balance of $500. So let's say that my minimum payment was $20 a month. It was $25 on the second card and $30 on the third card. So I would continue to make my minimum payments. And let's say I found $100 extra in my budget. So I would take that $100 and I would put it on the smallest credit card. So I would be putting $120 on that. I continued to do that until it was paid off. Now I take that $120 and I apply it to the $2,000 balance, and I keep making that $120 plus the $25 minimum payment on that. So now I'm paying $145 on that credit card. And then when I pay that one off, then I take that $145 and I put it on the third credit card until that one gets paid off. So who is this plan best for? People who need to see accomplishment quickly. So you need that sense of, oh yeah, I did it. It builds your motivation to keep doing it. Like I can watch that balance go down to 0 pretty quickly. Now, the bad thing about this method is that it takes you a little bit longer to pay off debt, because maybe your smallest debt isn't the one with the highest interest rate. And usually the ones with the higher interest rate, the balance will continue to grow, especially if you're only making the minimum payment because of that higher interest rate. But if you need that sense of accomplishment and you really want to see those credit card debt getting paid off, who really cares? Just put the plan together and do the snowball method. Now, the next method we're going to talk about is debt avalanche. So the debt avalanche approach is that you pay off the highest interest rate first, using that same kind of philosophy that we just talked about in the snowball method. Is that you would instead make a list of all your credit cards and then which one has the highest interest rate. Now, again, you still make payments on the rest of the minimum balances on the rest of the cards that you have, but then you tackle the one with the highest interest rate first, and you do the same thing. So if that was a $25 minimum, you are putting the $100 on it. Once that's paid off, you take the $125, you apply it to the second card, When that one's paid off, you take that, all that money, and you apply it to the third. So what's the pros of this approach? This approach helps you minimize the interest that you're paying, and potentially you could pay off debt quicker because that interest isn't accumulating as it was in the snowball method. The cons of this one is that it really takes strict discipline. Well, actually, they all really take strict discipline in making sure that you are paying those monthly payments and that extra every month. Now, another method that I have used in the past, and I really like this one for me because I like to have that same payment every month, and I like to have that fixed interest rate. So I did a debt consolidation loan. Now, may not be in the best interest right now because interest rates are quite high, but if interest rates would come down, you could get a debt consolidation loan. And what that does is it combines all your debt into one loan with one fixed payment, a fixed interest rate, and a fixed time period. So, for example, let's say that we consolidated all of our credit cards that we had, and so maybe our balance is, $5,500, and we're going to pay that off over 5 years, and our interest rate will be, I don't know, I'm making this stuff up on the fly, 7%. So we would have an interest rate fixed at 7%. We know in 5 years that loan would be paid off, and we'd have a fixed payment every month. Not to say that you couldn't put more on it and pay it off faster, but you would know what it is. And that way it kind of fits into your budget really nice. And that's just who I am. I like to have things be pretty consistent, and so that I know everything fits well into my budget. So I like these. Now, you could accomplish this also by not going to your bank and credit union, getting debt consolidation loan. You could transfer all your credit card balances to one credit card and with the lowest interest rate, and use that approach where you're just making that same payment every month until you get that credit card paid off. Bad thing about balance transfer, though, is that you typically have a 3% balance transfer fee added to your overall balance, your overall debt, when you make that transaction or you make that transfer. So be very careful of that. But sometimes you can, I don't know, if I haven't seen them in a long time, but maybe find a zero interest credit card that gives you 0%. And some people pay that, transfer their balance to the zero. When the zero is up, they transfer it to another zero. But remember, every time you do that, you do get that 3% balance transfer. So really technically a zero interest rate because you are paying that 3% balance transfer. Now, if none of those plans work for you, you could work with a debt counseling agency, and they would help you manage your debt. Now, they will also work with your creditors to maybe negotiate on behalf for you to maybe lower the payments or set up repayment plans, or even sometimes help you lower the balances. Now, there's some pros and cons to these. First, you want to make sure you're working with a reputable company. There are some not so good debt counseling agencies out there, so make sure that you are working with a reputable company. Now, the nice pros of this is that you do have one monthly payment that you pay to the credit counseling agency. They will, again, try to negotiate lower interest rates for you, and you could potentially pay off your debt faster. Now, the cons is that you're required to close all your credit cards. You must make that consistent payment to repay off your loans, and if you don't, you're going to blow up the whole program. Now, not all creditors participate in these programs. So ideally, try to do this on your own, but if you can't, then reach out to maybe a credit counseling agency. But no matter what strategy you choose, make sure you're committed to following through with that and trying to not get yourself in that situation again. So lots of times people will put together a debt repayment program, but what they'll do is then accumulate debt someplace else. So we really don't want to do that. So we want to put a plan together to where you're working on paying off your debt without incurring any other debt. And the best way that I know not to incur any other debt is to start building an emergency fund. So maybe it may take you a little bit longer to pay off debt, because maybe take a little bit of that money that you were using towards debt to build your emergency account. And if you can accomplish even just saving $1,000 in an emergency account, you'll feel so much better about having that security that if something happens, that you have that money to go to and you won't have to incur any more debt by using your credit card to pay that off. And $1,000 may not seem like a lot of money to some for an emergency account, and others it may be daunting, but it just really is a good solid number to start with. Ideally, you want 3 to 6 months of your fixed expenses in an emergency account, but we can get out of debt and then we can work on building that emergency account next. If you'd like to learn more about managing your money, please, check out some of the other resources on our website. We've got a budget tracker. We have a webinar on budgeting for groceries if you need to get help getting control of that. Seems to be ever-increasing budget or ever-increasing grocery costs. That's a great webinar to listen to. That is free. And if you'd like to look at our 6-module course called Money Making Matter, where you can talk about mindset all the way through to estate planning and learn everything you can about money, you may want to check that out. So everybody have a great day, and we will talk again next week.